Welcome to novelsaudio.com. We hope you have a relaxing and enjoyable time.
Chapter 1. The butterfly on her wrist. The anonymous text arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Evelyn Cross was mid-sentence in her quarterly review presentation when her phone vibrated against the mahogany conference table. She ignored it, as she always did. Her voice didn't waver as she walked the board through Q3 projections, her laser pointer tracing elegant arcs across the projected graphs. Your husband is in room 205 of the King Love Hotel. Go see for yourself. She read the message 30 seconds after the meeting ended, standing alone in the empty conference room with the lights dimming automatically around her. Her first instinct was to delete it. Spam. A cruel joke. Someone's twisted entertainment. But her thumb hovered. Julian had been working late all month, coming home with his collar loosened and his eyes avoiding hers. She had attributed it to the Harrison Tower project. She had made him tea, rubbed his shoulders, told him it would pass. She had organized their life so meticulously that she hadn't noticed the cracks forming beneath her feet. Evelyn checked her watch. 4:15 p.m. She called Julian's office. No answer. She called his cell. Voicemail. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that she would go, see that it was nothing, and laugh about it over dinner. That was how Evelyn Cross operated. She solved problems. She confronted challenges head-on. She did not hide from unpleasant truths. The King Love Hotel was a 20-minute cab ride from her office, tucked away on a side street in Midtown. Black glass and brushed steel, no signage visible from the street. The kind of place designed for people who need privacy. Evelyn's heels clicked against the marble lobby floor as she approached the front desk. The young man behind the counter looked up with practiced neutrality. Room 205, she said, her voice steady. I'm checking. Name, Evelyn Cross. The reservation should be under my assistant's name, Sarah Chen. There was no reservation, of course, but the text had included a confirmation number. She recited it and the clerk nodded, sliding a key card across the counter without further questions. The elevator ride to the second floor took 17 seconds. Evelyn counted everyone. The hallway was silent, carpeted in deep burgundy that swallowed footsteps. Room 205 was at the end of the corridor. She slid the key card into the lock. The green light blinked. She pushed the door open. The room was empty. Standard hotel fare, king bed with white linens, a desk, a minibar, floor-to-ceiling curtains drawn tight. Nothing unusual, nothing incriminating. Evelyn let out a breath. She hadn't realized she was holding. Of course it was nothing. She was going to. The television screen flickered to life. She froze. The image was grainy, clearly from a security camera feed. The angle showed a bedroom, different from this one, with darker walls and a single lamp casting amber light across the sheets. And there, on that bed, was her husband. Julian Cross was naked. His body moved with a rhythm she recognized intimately, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his head tilted back when he was lost in sensation. But the woman beneath him was not Evelyn. She had dark hair, long and loose, spilling across the pillow. Her legs were wrapped around his waist, her nails dragging down his back. Evelyn couldn't see her face, only the curve of her neck, the arch of her spine, the way her fingers tangled in Julian's hair. And then the woman shifted, reaching for the headboard, and Evelyn saw it. A small, intricate butterfly tattoo on her left wrist. The wings were spread, delicate and precise, the ink a deep navy against olive skin. Chapter 2. Scratches on wine glasses. Evelyn stood frozen in room 205, her eyes locked on the television screen. The image burned into her retinas, Julian's body moving with practiced rhythm, the stranger's legs wrapped around him, her nails leaving red trails across his back. The butterfly tattoo seemed to pulse on her wrist, wings spread in permanent flight. Evelyn's hand found the remote on the nightstand. She pressed the power button. The screen went black. She stood in the sudden silence, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Her phone was already in her hand. She didn't remember pulling it from her pocket. She took a screenshot of the frozen image before the feed cut. Evidence. Proof. Something solid to hold onto when her world was dissolving into liquid terror. Then she ran. Her heels clicked against the hallway carpet, then the marble lobby, then the cold sidewalk. She didn't stop until she was inside a cab, the door slammed shut, the driver asking where to go. She gave him her home address. The cab pulled into traffic. Evelyn sat in the back seat, her hands trembling in her lap, her phone clutched so tight her knuckles went white. She stared at the screenshot. Julian's face half turned to the camera, the woman's wrist the butterfly tattoo. Focus, she told herself. You are Evelyn Cross, you handle crises, you solve problems. She opened her contacts, called Julian, he answered on the third ring. Hey babe. His voice was warm, familiar, the same voice that told her he loved her every morning. What's up? Evelyn's throat closed. She forced air through it. Just checking in, you working late again? Yeah, stuck with the Harrison Tower partners. Dinner's gonna run long. A pause. You sound tired, everything okay? No, she wanted to scream. I just watched you fuck another woman in a hotel room. Fine, she said. Just a long day, I'll see you when you get home. Love you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Love you too. She hung up. The cab dropped her at the apartment. She walked through the door, past the framed wedding photo on the console table, their smiles so bright, so certain, and into the bathroom. She turned on the shower, cold water. She stepped under it fully clothed, the shock stealing her breath, and she stood there for an hour, shivering, her dress plastered to her skin, her mind replaying the image on a loop. Morning came whether she wanted it or not. Evelyn lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Julian had come home at midnight, smelling of expensive soap, and kissed her forehead. She had pretended to be asleep. He had climbed into bed beside her, and she had felt the warmth of his body like a betrayal. Now sunlight streamed through the curtains, and she needed to talk to someone. She called Rose. Chen, girl, Rose answered on the first ring, her voice warm with concern. You sound like shit, what happened? Can we meet, the Gilded Page, in an hour? Say no more, I'll have your usual latte ready. Evelyn dressed carefully. She chose a cream sweater and tailored trousers, applied her makeup with precision, pinned her auburn hair into its usual perfect bun. The woman in the mirror looked composed, professional, unbroken. She left the apartment before Julian woke up. The Gilded Page was a corner bookstore cafe in Brooklyn, all exposed brick and mismatched armchairs and the smell of fresh coffee and old paper. Rose owned it, ran it, lived above it. It was Evelyn's sanctuary. Rose was behind the counter when Evelyn walked in, her dark curls escaping from a messy bun, her colorful glasses perched on her nose. She took one look at Evelyn and her smile faded. Okay, Rose said, sliding a latte across the counter. Spill. Evelyn took the cup. Her hands were still shaking. I need to tell you something. But I need to wait for, the bell above the door chimed. Evelyn turned. Myra Morgan walked in, her long black hair falling in waves over her shoulders, her olive skin glowing. She was wearing a sleeveless white blouse and wide-legged trousers, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion editorial. She smiled when she saw Evelyn. Sorry I'm late, traffic was murder. Don't worry about it. Evelyn forced a smile. I needed to see you both. I have something I need to tell you. Myra slid into the chair across from Evelyn, crossing her legs. You look terrible. Are you sick? I'm fine. Evelyn wrapped her hands around her latte, drawing warmth from the cup. Something happened yesterday, something I can't explain. Rose leaned against the counter, arms crossed. We're listening. Evelyn took a breath. I got an anonymous text, telling me to go to a hotel, and when I got there, she stopped. Myra's wrist was resting on the table, her left wrist, and there on her olive skin was a small, intricate butterfly tattoo. The wings were spread. The ink was deep navy. Exactly like the one Evelyn had seen on the screen. Evelyn, Myra's brow furrowed. What is it? Evelyn stared at the tattoo. The world tilted. Her latte cup clattered against the saucer. When did you get that? She heard herself ask, her voice hollow. Myra looked down at her wrist, then back up at Evelyn. Her expression shifted, something flickering in her dark eyes that Evelyn couldn't read. This. Myra touched the butterfly with her fingertips. I got it last week, on my trip to Bali. Last week. The same week Julian had started working late. The same week he had come home with his collar loosened and his eyes avoiding hers. Evelyn's heart stopped, then shattered. Chapter 3. Broken glass under light, the silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Evelyn's fingers were frozen around the latte cup, the heat burning through the porcelain, but she couldn't feel it. All she could feel was the image of that butterfly, wings spread, ink deep, seared into her retina like a brand. Evelyn? Myra's voice came from far away, muffled as if through water. You look like you've seen a ghost. Evelyn blinked. Once, twice. She forced her lungs to expand, forced her lips to curve into something that resembled a smile. "Sorry," she heard herself say. I didn't sleep well. I think I'm running on fumes." Rose was watching her with sharp eyes. "You sure you're okay? You went pale." "I'm fine." Evelyn picked up her latte and took a long sip, using the motion to buy time. The coffee was bitter on her tongue. "Really, I just need to get some rest." Myra reached across the table and touched Evelyn's hand. Her fingers were warm, familiar, the touch of a friend who had been there for a decade, and on her wrist the butterfly seemed to pulse. "Last week, on my trip to Bali." Evelyn wanted to pull her hand away. She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab Myra's wrist and press it against the table and demand to know why. Instead, she squeezed Myra's fingers and smiled. "So," Evelyn said, her voice steady now, "I actually wanted to talk to you both about something." Rose leaned in. "We're listening." Evelyn set down her cup. She had to be careful. She had to be smart. "I got an anonymous text yesterday, telling me to go to a hotel, and when I got there..." She paused, watching Myra's face. Myra's expression was open, curious, her dark eyes fixed on Evelyn with concern. "When you got there, what?" "I saw Julian." Evelyn let the words hang. "With a woman." Rose's mouth fell open. "No fucking way." Myra's hand flew to her chest. "Oh my God, Evelyn, are you serious? Who was she?" Evelyn's gaze flickered to Myra's wrist. "The butterfly, the wings." "I don't know," she said slowly. I couldn't see her face, but she had a tattoo, a butterfly, on her left wrist. The words landed like stones in still water. Myra's hand dropped from her chest. Her eyes widened. For a split second, barely a heartbeat, something flickered in their depths. Fear? Guilt? Evelyn couldn't tell. Then Myra laughed, a short, disbelieving laugh. "A butterfly, that's a pretty common tattoo, Evelyn. Is it?" Evelyn's voice was soft. "I didn't know." Rose was staring at Myra's wrist. "Wait, Myra, you have a butterfly tattoo." Myra looked down at her wrist as if seeing it for the first time. "I got it in Bali." "Last week, it's not." She shook her head. "Evelyn, you can't seriously think it was." "Me? I don't know what to think." Evelyn wrapped her hands around her latte again, drawing comfort from the warmth. "That's why I needed to talk to you both. I needed to hear someone tell me I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy," Rose said firmly. "But you need to be careful. Anonymous texts? Hotel rooms? This sounds like someone is playing games with you." Myra nodded, her expression earnest. "Rose is right. You need to find out who sent that text before you jump to conclusions. And if Julian really did cheat..." She reached across the table again, this time taking Evelyn's hand firmly. "Then you deserve better. You know that, right?" Evelyn looked at Myra's face. Open, concerned, the face of a woman who had been her friend for 12 years. 12 years. "Thank you," Evelyn whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The next hour passed in a blur of forced smiles and empty conversation. Evelyn told them about the hotel room, about the TV screen, about the photos she had taken. She left out the part about the lock code being their wedding anniversary. She left out the part about the cold shower and the sleepless night. She watched Myra's reactions carefully. The way Myra's brows furrowed at the right moments. The way her voice cracked with sympathy. The way she squeezed Evelyn's hand at all the appropriate beats. It was perfect. Too perfect. When Evelyn finally stood to leave, Rose pulled her into a tight hug. "Call me tonight, okay? Don't deal with this alone." "I won't." Myra hugged her next, and Evelyn felt the butterfly tattoo press against her arm like a brand. "I love you," Myra said. "Whatever happens, I'm here for you." Evelyn smiled. "I know." She walked out of the gilded page with her head held high, her heels clicking against the pavement, her heart a shattered mess of glass and suspicion. She didn't go home. She went to the office of Margaret Chen. The law firm was all glass and chrome, perched on the 32nd floor of a midtown tower. Margaret Chen's office was a fortress of files and legal texts, the walls lined with framed degrees and certificates of achievement. Margaret herself was a small woman with a sharp bob and sharper eyes. She wore a crimson blazer that seemed to announce, "I will destroy you," before she even spoke. "Evelyn," Margaret gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit, tell me everything." Evelyn sat. She placed her hands flat on her knees to stop them from trembling. "My husband is having an affair," she said. "I have evidence, photos, and I think the woman is my best friend." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "That's a hell of a combination." "I need to know my options." Evelyn's voice was steady now. "I need to know what I can do, what I..." Should be collecting how to protect myself. Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying Evelyn with clinical precision. First thing, don't confront him, not yet. You tip your hand, he'll hide assets, delete evidence, lawyer up. You want to be 2 steps ahead. Okay. Second, start documenting everything. Screenshots, call logs, bank statements. If he's been spending money on her, we need to know. Evelyn nodded. I've already started. Good. Margaret opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. This is a checklist of everything you need to gather. Follow it to the letter. And Evelyn? Yes. Don't tell anyone what you're doing, not even your closest friends. The more people who know, the more chances something leaks. Evelyn's throat tightened. Including my best friend? Margaret's eyes sharpened. Especially your best friend. Evelyn left the law firm with the folder tucked into her bag and a cold, clear purpose in her chest. She went to Myra's apartment. Myra wasn't home, she had a gallery opening to attend. She'd mentioned it at the cafe, but Evelyn had a key. She'd had a key for years, ever since Myra had moved into the city and declared they were emergency access best friends. Evelyn let herself in. The apartment was clean, minimalist, filled with art books and dried flowers and the faint scent of sandalwood. Evelyn walked through the living room, past the kitchen, into Myra's bedroom. She opened the closet. She found what she was looking for in a drawer beneath a stack of scarves, a receipt from a hotel, the King Love Hotel, dated 3 days ago. Evelyn's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and photographed the receipt. Then she found a strand of hair on Myra's brush, wrapped it in tissue, and placed it in her bag. For the DNA test, she told herself, just to be sure. But she already knew. That night, Evelyn sat in the dark of her living room, her laptop open, her evidence folder growing. She had recorded Julian's calls. She had photographed his bank receipts. She had screenshots of his text messages, his late-night check-ins, his I love yous that now tasted like ash in her mouth. The door opened at 11:47 p.m. Julian walked in, loosening his tie, his hair slightly disheveled. He looked tired. He looked handsome. He looked like the man she had married. He looked like a stranger. Hey, babe. He crossed the room and bent down to kiss her cheek. Sorry I'm late. The Harrison deal is a nightmare. Evelyn's skin crawled where his lips had touched. She stood up. I have something to tell you, she said. Julian paused, his hand still on his tie. Something flickered in his hazel eyes. Nerves? Guilt? Before he smoothed his expression into a smile. What's so serious about you? His voice was light, teasing, the voice of a man who had no idea his world was about to collapse. Evelyn was silent for a few seconds. She watched his face, searching for the cracks, the tells, the signs she had missed for months. Then she smiled, cold, sharp, perfect. Nothing, it's just 2 more days until our 5th wedding anniversary. We should prepare for that anniversary. I want to invite friends and everyone. Julian's shoulders relaxed visibly. A genuine smile spread across his face, the smile of a man who thought he had dodged a bullet. That's a great idea. He stepped forward, reaching for her. I'll take care of organizing the celebration. You don't have to worry about a thing. Evelyn stepped back, just out of his reach. Thank you, she said softly. I knew I could count on you. She turned and walked into the bedroom. Behind her, Julian's smile lingered, unaware. But Evelyn's eyes, reflected in the dark glass of the window, held no warmth. Only the cold, patient light of a trap being set. Chapter 4. The anniversary preparations 2 days before their 5th wedding anniversary, Evelyn began to realize that the most painful thing was not suspecting Julian of betraying her. It was discovering that she had always been last on his priority list. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as Evelyn poured herself coffee, still in her robe. She had barely taken a sip when her phone buzzed on the counter. Lydia Cross's name flashed on the screen. Evelyn's hand hesitated over the phone before she answered. Good morning, Mother. Evelyn? Lydia's voice was crisp, businesslike. I've been thinking about the anniversary celebration. I want to decide the menu and guest list myself. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her mug. Mother, this is Julian and my wedding anniversary. I thought we would. You've been a bride for 5 years and you still don't understand the rules. Lydia's tone sharpened. Your husband's family is the most important thing. I know what's appropriate. I know who should be invited. You're still young, you don't understand these social nuances. Evelyn glanced at the living room where Julian sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He had heard everything. The phone was loud enough, and Lydia never bothered to modulate her voice. Mother, I think we should discuss this together. Julian's father would have wanted it this way. I'm not going to argue with you, Evelyn. I'll come by this afternoon with the list. The line went dead. Evelyn stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, the dial tone humming like a wound. She walked into the living room. Julian looked up, his expression mild, unconcerned. What did Mom want? She wants to plan the entire anniversary celebration herself. Julian shrugged. Mom has good intentions. The words landed like a slap. Familiar, predictable. Always the same refrain, every time his mother overstepped, every time Evelyn was dismissed, every time she needed him to stand beside her. Julian, it's our anniversary. Shouldn't we have a say in? She's just trying to help, Evelyn. Don't make it a big deal. Evelyn stared at him. She wanted to say something. She wanted to scream, but the words died in her throat, suffocated by years of similar conversations, similar dismissals, similar moments where she had hoped he would choose her and he never did. Fine, she said quietly. Julian smiled, already looking back at his phone. That's my girl. That afternoon, they drove to Lydia's house. The Cross family home was a sprawling colonial in Greenwich, Connecticut, ivy-covered brick, manicured lawns, the kind of house that screamed old money and older expectations. Evelyn had never felt comfortable here. Every visit was a performance, a test she was always failing. They walked through the front door to the sound of laughter. Evelyn stopped in the doorway of the living room. Myra was there. She was arranging flowers in a crystal vase on the coffee table, her dark hair falling in soft waves, her laugh bright and easy. She looked up as they entered, her smile widening. Evelyn, Julian, I was just helping Lydia with the decorations. Lydia sat in her armchair, watching Myra with an expression of warm approval that Evelyn had never seen. Directed at herself. Myra has such an eye for these things. She volunteered as soon as I mentioned the celebration. How thoughtful of you, Evelyn said. Her voice came out steady, controlled. She watched the butterfly tattoo peek out from beneath Myra's sleeve as she adjusted a stem. Can I get anyone tea? Myra asked, already moving toward the kitchen. I'll help you, Evelyn said. She followed Myra into the kitchen, watching her movements, too comfortable, too familiar. Myra opened cabinets without asking, knew where the sugar was, where the teacups were kept. How often do you come here? Evelyn asked, keeping her voice light. Myra's hand paused on a teacup. Oh, you know, Lydia and I have become close. She's lonely since Harold passed. I try to visit when I can. She never mentioned it. Myra turned, her smile fixed. I didn't want to make you feel bad. You're so busy with work. Evelyn held her gaze. That's very considerate of you. They carried the tea tray back to the living room. Lydia took a sip and immediately frowned. Evelyn, this tea is bland. Did you even let it steep? I followed the same instructions as always, Mother. Clearly not. Myra, dear, would you make another pot? You know how I like it. Of course. Myra took the tray with a sympathetic glance at Evelyn that felt more like a performance than genuine concern. Evelyn sat down, her hands folded in her lap, her nails digging into her palms. Lydia began discussing the guest list. I've invited the Hendersons, the Whitfields, the Cross family from Boston. Myra will be there, of course. She's practically family. Of course, Evelyn echoed. Julian sat beside her, silent, scrolling through his phone. Lydia picked up an apple and began peeling it with precise, deliberate movements. Evelyn, would you cut some fruit? The knife is in the drawer. Evelyn rose and did as she was told. She brought the plate back, the slices arranged neatly. Lydia examined them. These cuts are uneven. Look, she picked up a piece. This one is twice as thick as the others. Honestly, Evelyn, you're a grown woman. You should know how to cut fruit by now. Sorry, Mother. And don't apologize like that. It sounds insincere. Evelyn said nothing. Myra returned with fresh tea. Lydia took a sip and beamed. Perfect. See, Evelyn, it's not difficult. The conversation drifted. Lydia talked about the Whitfield's daughter who had just gotten engaged, about the Hendersons' new vacation home in the Hamptons, about how wonderful it was that Myra had time to help with the arrangements. Not everyone has their priorities straight, Lydia said, glancing at Evelyn. Some people are too focused on their careers to understand what really matters. Evelyn's jaw tightened. My career pays the bills, Mother. Julian pays the bills too. A wife's job is to support her husband, not compete with him. Julian shifted beside her but said nothing. The afternoon wore on. Evelyn helped clear the dishes, helped wash them, helped dry them. Every movement was scrutinized. Every action was found wanting. And then Lydia said it. She was standing at the sink, Myra beside her, their heads bent together in conversation. Lydia laughed at something Myra said, then turned to Evelyn with a sigh. You know, if Julian could marry a woman like Myra, I wouldn't have to worry about anything. The words fell into the room like glass shattering. Silence. Evelyn's hands stopped moving. The dishcloth dripped into the sink. Myra's face went pale. Lydia, don't say that. I'm just being honest. Lydia's tone was matter-of-fact, unrepentant. Myra knows how to take care of a home. She knows how to take care of people. Some women are just naturally suited for marriage. Evelyn looked at Julian. He was standing by the doorway, his hands in his pockets, his eyes on the floor. He said nothing. He didn't defend her. He didn't say a word. Evelyn set down the dishcloth. She dried her hands slowly, carefully, as if she were handling something fragile. Thank you for your honesty, Mother, she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. I think we should go now. Don't be dramatic, Evelyn. We should go, Evelyn repeated. She walked past Julian, past Myra, past the living room with its perfect flower arrangements and its crystal vases and its carefully curated lies. She didn't stop until she was in the car, the door closed, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Julian climbed in beside her. What was that about? Nothing. Evelyn, you're overreacting. Mom was just joking. Evelyn started the engine. She pulled out of the driveway, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. She wasn't joking, Julian. She was. You know how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. She meant every word. Julian sighed, the sound of a man inconvenienced by his wife's emotions. Why do you always have to make everything so difficult? Evelyn didn't answer. She drove in silence, the miles passing, the landscape blurring. She thought about the tea, the fruit, the flower arrangements. She thought about Myra's practiced sympathy and Lydia's casual cruelty. She thought about Julian's silence, his shrugs, his endless capacity for doing nothing. There are wounds that are not caused by a single sentence. They are caused by hundreds of similar sentences accumulated over years, each one a small cut that never quite heals. When they got home, Julian disappeared into his study. Evelyn heard him on the phone, his voice low and cheerful, laughing at something. She walked into the bedroom. She opened the closet to find her dress for the celebration, a deep blue gown she had bought months ago, hoping this anniversary would be different. Her hand brushed against something at the back of the drawer, an old box. She pulled it out, her fingers trembling slightly. The cardboard was worn, the edges soft with age. She lifted the lid, photographs. The first one was from their engagement party. Julian had his arm around her, his smile wide and genuine, his eyes full of her. She was laughing, her head tilted back, her hand resting on his chest. The second was from their honeymoon in Santorini. They were standing on a cliff overlooking the caldera, the sunset painting everything gold. Julian was kissing her temple, his eyes closed, his expression peaceful. The third was from their first anniversary. He had surprised her with a weekend getaway, a small cabin in the mountains. They had cooked dinner together, burned the pasta, laughed until they couldn't breathe. Evelyn sat on the bedroom floor. She looked at those photos for a long time. The Julian in these photos held her hand. He protected her from everyone. He was always on her side. She touched the photograph of his face, her finger tracing the outline of his smile. When had he stopped looking at her like that? When had she stopped being the woman in these photos? The tears came without warning, hot and silent, sliding down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. She let them fall, let them soak into the photographs, let them blur the faces of the two people who had once loved each other. She wasn't crying because she was still heartbroken. She was crying because she realized the man in those photos had disappeared a long time ago. And perhaps what needed to end was not the celebration. It was this marriage. Chapter 5. 5 years of marriage, the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton glittered like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across tables draped in ivory linen, each centerpiece a cascade of white roses and eucalyptus. The champagne flowed freely. Laughter echoed off the gilded ceilings. Everything was perfect. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the private dressing room, her reflection staring back at her from the full-length mirror. She had chosen black, a simple sheath dress, elegant and severe, with a neckline that showed the sharp line of her collarbones. No jewelry except the small diamond studs Julian had given her on their first anniversary. Her hair was pulled back tight, not a strand out of place. She looked like a woman attending a funeral. Perhaps she was. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rose, "You don't have to do this." Evelyn typed back, "Yes, I do." She slipped the phone into her clutch, picked up the folder on the vanity table, and walked out the door. The ballroom was already full when she arrived. She stood at the entrance, scanning the crowd. There was Harold Sterling, her boss, deep in conversation with a client. There was Nina Petrova, her eyes sharp and curious, already whispering to the woman beside her. And there, by the center table, was her family. Lydia Cross stood in a gown of deep burgundy silk, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her arm linked through Myra's as if they were mother and daughter. Myra wore a soft pink dress, demure and elegant, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She was laughing at something Lydia had said, her hand resting lightly on the older woman's arm. Julian stood beside them, handsome in his charcoal suit, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was smiling, relaxed, the picture of a man content with his life. Evelyn watched them for a long moment, a perfect family portrait. With her nowhere in the frame, she stepped forward. The moment she entered the hall, heads turned. Conversations faltered. Eyes traveled from her face to her dress and back again. She saw Lydia's smile freeze. She saw Myra's eyes widen slightly. She saw Julian's brow furrow in confusion. "Evelyn!" Lydia's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. She approached, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "What are you wearing?" "Good evening, Mother." Evelyn's voice was calm. "A dress. Black for your 5th anniversary?" Lydia's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is a celebration, Evelyn, not a—" "I find it very suitable," Evelyn interrupted, her smile never wavering. Lydia's eyes narrowed. She opened her mouth to respond, but Julian appeared at her side, his hand touching Evelyn's elbow. "You're late," he said, his voice low. "I'm here now. You could have called. Mom was worried." Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him. The familiar curve of his jaw, the warmth of his hazel eyes, the way his smile never quite reached them anymore. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was choosing my dress." Julian's gaze flickered to her outfit, and something passed across his face, discomfort perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. "It's very you," he said finally. "Yes," Evelyn agreed. "It is." The evening unfolded like a play Evelyn had already memorized. Lydia took center stage, as always. She fluttered from table to table, Myra trailing behind her like a perfect shadow. "This is Myra, our dear family friend," Lydia would say her hand resting on Myra's arm. "She's been such a help with the arrangements. I don't know what I'd do without her." "She's lovely," the guests would reply, their eyes traveling between Myra and Evelyn, questions forming but never asked. At one point, an elderly woman, one of Lydia's bridge partners, leaned in and asked, "And where is Evelyn tonight? I haven't seen her." Lydia's smile tightened. "Oh, she's here somewhere. She's always been so slow to get ready." Myra laughed softly, her hand covering her mouth. Evelyn heard every word. She stood by the bar, a glass of water in her hand, watching. Julian was across the room, laughing with a group of his colleagues from the architecture firm. He didn't look her way. He didn't notice that his wife was standing alone at the bar, that his mother was parading his mistress around like a prized possession, that his marriage was bleeding out on the marble floor. He didn't notice anything. He never did. The dinner service began. Evelyn found herself seated at the main table, between Julian and an empty chair that should have been filled by a cousin who had canceled last minute. Across from her sat Lydia, with Myra on her right. The conversation flowed around her like water around a stone. "The salmon is excellent. The decorations are stunning. Lydia, you've outdone yourself." Evelyn cut her steak into small, precise pieces. She ate slowly. She smiled when required. Then the question came. It was the elderly woman again, the one with the sharp eyes and the curious smile. She leaned forward, her voice carrying across the table. "So, Evelyn, when do you and Julian plan to have children? It's been 5 years now." The table went silent. Evelyn set down her fork. Before she could answer, Lydia sighed, a long, theatrical sound that drew every eye. "That's what I worry about most," Lydia said, shaking her head. 5 years of marriage and still no good news." The silence deepened. Evelyn felt the weight of every gaze upon her. She saw the pity in some eyes, the judgment in others, the barely concealed satisfaction in Myra's. "If women only focus on their careers," Lydia continued, her voice dripping with false concern, "how can they take care of their families? A wife's first duty is to—" her home. Evelyn turned to Julian. He was staring at his plate. He didn't look up. He didn't say a word, not a single word. Evelyn felt something inside her click into place, a lock turning, a door closing. She picked up her wine glass and took a slow, deliberate sip. "You're right, Mother," she said, her voice soft. "A wife's first duty is to her home." Lydia's eyes widened in surprise at the agreement. "But a husband's first duty," Evelyn continued, setting down her glass, "is to defend his wife." The table went utterly still. Julian's head snapped up. Lydia's face flushed red. Myra looked down at her plate. Evelyn smiled. It was a beautiful smile, cold and perfect. "Excuse me," she said. "I need to prepare for the speech." She rose from her chair and walked away, leaving the silence behind her like a wake. The speech came after dessert. The host, a jovial man in a too-tight tuxedo, took the stage and welcomed everyone to the celebration of 5 years of perfect marriage. Evelyn stood in the wings, the folder clutched in her hands. She watched Julian climb the stage, his smile wide and confident. He took the microphone and the room fell quiet. "5 years ago," he began, his voice warm and practiced, "I married the most incredible woman I've ever known. Evelyn," he looked out into the crowd, searching for her, "you've made my life complete. You've been my partner, my confidant, my rock." The audience murmured their approval. Evelyn felt nothing. "I know marriage isn't always easy," Julian continued, "but every day with you has been worth it. I look forward to the next 50 years. Applause rippled through the room. Julian raised his glass. "To my wife, to Evelyn." "To Evelyn," the crowd echoed. He looked around, waiting for her to join him on stage. Evelyn stepped out of the wings. She walked across the stage, her heels clicking against the wood, the black of her dress stark against the white backdrop. She took the microphone from Julian's hand. "Thank you, Julian," she said. "That was beautiful." She turned to face the audience. "I also prepared a special gift for my husband." She nodded toward the back of the room. The LED screen behind the stage flickered too. Life, the first image was from their wedding day. Evelyn in white, Julian in black, both of them laughing, their faces young and hopeful. The audience sighed with nostalgia. Then the image changed, a hotel entrance. The King Love Hotel. The sign was clear, unmistakable. The next image was a timestamp. 3 months ago, 2:47 p.m. Then a video, grainy security footage but clear enough. A man and a woman walking through the lobby. The man's arm around the woman's waist. The woman's head tilted back, laughing. The man was Julian. The woman was Myra. The butterfly tattoo on her left wrist was unmistakable. The room went silent. Absolute, crushing silence. Evelyn watched the video play, watched Julian's hand slide down to Myra's hip, watched them disappear into the elevator. She didn't flinch. The video ended. The screen went black. For one long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then the chaos began. Chairs scraped against the floor. Voices rose in shock and confusion. Camera phones were raised, capturing the frozen screen. "Julian," someone called out. "Who is that woman?" "Is that Myra?" Lydia stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. Her face was white, her hands trembling. "That's a lie, that's..." But the video didn't lie, and everyone in the room had seen it. Julian stood frozen on the stage, his face drained of all color. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Myra had risen from her seat, her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. The guests around her were staring, whispering, pointing. "Evelyn!" Julian's voice cracked. "Evelyn, I can explain." Evelyn reached into her clutch and pulled out the folder. She walked to the table where Julian had been sitting. She placed the folder in front of his empty chair, her movements slow and deliberate. "Inside is the divorce petition," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried through the entire room. "I've endured enough for 5 years." Julian stumbled off the stage, nearly falling. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her skin. "Evelyn, please, not here, not like this." "Like what?" Evelyn looked at his hand on her arm, then back at his face. "Like you did, in a hotel room, while I was at home planning our anniversary. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I love you. You love the comfort I provide," Evelyn said. "You love the life I built for you, but you have never loved me, not the way I deserved." Julian's eyes filled with tears. "Please, give me another chance, I'll do anything." Evelyn looked at him. She looked at the man she had married, the man she had trusted. The man who had stood silent while his mother humiliated her, while his mistress smiled in her face, while her heart slowly, quietly broke. She saw him clearly for the first time, and he was nothing, but Evelyn no longer looked at him. She turned and walked down the stage amid the stunned eyes of all the guests. "Evelyn," Julian's voice cracked behind her. "Evelyn, wait." She didn't stop. Evelyn, please, the doors loomed ahead. The exit. Freedom, Evelyn. She pushed open the doors and stepped into the cool night air. Behind her, the sound of Julian's voice calling her name grew fainter and fainter. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. Because the woman who once loved him with all her heart died a long time ago. Chapter 7. The stranger in the midnight. The days blurred into a single, endless ache. Evelyn stopped answering her phone. She stopped checking her messages. She stopped doing much of anything except staring at the ceiling of her apartment, watching the shadows crawl across the walls like the sun rose and fell and rose again. The video was everywhere. She hadn't watched it again. She didn't need to. The image was burned into her mind. Julian's body tangled with another woman's, the sheets twisted around them, the soft glow of the hotel room lights catching the sweat on their skin. She had seen enough the first time. What she? Couldn't escape was the sound. Her own heartbeat hammering against her ribs as she watched, the blood rushing in her ears. The strange, hollow silence that followed as if the world had stopped breathing. 5 years. 5 years of laughter and arguments and quiet mornings. 5 years of building a life together. 5 years of believing that she was enough. And now this. Julian's mother called 17 times in 3 days. Evelyn let each call go to voicemail. She listened to them later, lying in bed, her phone pressed to her ear like a wound she couldn't stop touching. Evelyn, darling, please, Julian is destroyed. He hasn't left. His room in days. He's crying, Evelyn, crying. I've never seen my son like this. Good. Think about what you're doing to this family, to yourself. Divorce is not the answer. Marriage is about working through difficulties. This is a difficulty, that's all. A difficulty. Evelyn, I'm begging you, please just talk to him. Give him a chance to explain. He loves you. He's made a terrible mistake, but he loves you. She deleted the messages, one by one. Each delete felt like a small act of violence, a tiny rebellion against the world that wanted her to forgive, to forget, to swallow her pride and go back to being the perfect wife. She couldn't, she wouldn't. Julian showed up at her office on Thursday. Evelyn saw him through the glass walls of the conference room, standing in the lobby with a bouquet of white roses in his hands. His hair was unwashed. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. He looked like hell. She felt nothing. Harold Sterling appeared at her elbow, his face tight with barely concealed irritation. Evelyn, your husband is here. Again, I need you to handle this. I'll handle it. She walked to the lobby. Julian's face lit up when he saw her. A desperate, hungry hope that made her stomach turn. Evelyn, baby, please, don't call me that. I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve you, but please just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain. There's nothing to explain, Julian. I saw the video. It's not what you think. I was drugged. Someone set me up. I would never. Stop. He fell silent. The roses trembled in his hands. Stop lying to me, Evelyn said, her voice flat. Stop pretending. Stop calling. Stop coming to my office. We're getting a divorce. There's nothing you can say that will change that. She turned and walked away. Behind her, Julian began to cry. That night, Evelyn found herself standing outside a bar she had never been to before. The sign above the door read The Hollow. Fitting. She pushed open the door and walked inside. The air was thick with smoke and cheap perfume. A jukebox played something slow and sad. The bartender, a woman with tired eyes and a silver nose ring, looked her up and down. Rough night? Rough life. The bartender poured her a whiskey without being asked. Evelyn drank it, then another, then another. The alcohol burned going down. She welcomed the pain. It was clean. Simple, it. Didn't ask her to forgive anyone. She thought about Julian's face in the lobby. The tears, the desperate hope. She thought about his mother's voicemails. The pleading, the manipulation. She thought about the video. The way Julian's hands had touched another woman's skin. The way Myra had smiled. She drank until the memories blurred. Until the edges of everything went soft and dark. Until she couldn't feel the ache anymore. The bartender said something. Evelyn didn't hear it. She slid off the stool, her legs unsteady, the world tilting around her. She needed air. She stumbled out of the bar, the cold night hitting her face like a slap. The street was empty. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting pools of yellow light onto the wet pavement. She started walking. She didn't know where she was going. Home, maybe, or nowhere. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Her heels clicked against the concrete. The sound was too loud in the silence. Her head spun. Her stomach churned. She just wanted to lie down, to close her eyes, to make everything stop. She took another step. Then another, her ankle twisted. The world lurched sideways. She was falling, her arms flailing, her body tilting, the ground rushing up to meet her, strong arms caught her. She blinked. The world swam. Back into focus. A man's face hovered above her, half hidden in shadow, dark eyes, a sharp jaw, lips curled into a smile that made her blood run cold. He didn't say a word, he just looked at her. That smile spreading slowly across his face. Sinister. Knowing, Evelyn tried to speak, to push him away, but her limbs were heavy, her mind fogged with alcohol. She couldn't form the words. He lifted her easily, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing. She heard the jingle of keys, the click of a door opening. A hotel lobby, marble floors, a golden chandelier. The receptionist didn't look up. As the man carried her past the front desk toward the elevators, Evelyn's head lolled against his shoulder. The world was spinning. She tried to fight, tried to scream, but nothing came out. The man pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open. He carried her inside. And then he smiled. A dark, chilling smile. He still said nothing. In a small corner of the lobby, a phone was quietly pointing toward them. A flash suddenly burst in the darkness. Someone recorded a video of Evelyn being carried into the hotel by the man. No one knew that that moment was about to completely change Evelyn's life.
Welcome to NovelsAudio.com. We hope you have a relaxing and enjoyable time.